acronym. So this is the first university institution at the architectural faculty, and the Professor Patti will explain to you what a lab is. And in this first phase of a public meeting that we organize here in such a prestigious venue as this one, and I'd like to thank the organizers of Mido that gave us this opportunity and that host us. So you will get to know what we are doing and what we are about to do, and above all, what are the main and leading concepts guiding our work. So thank you very much for being here. Thank you for being patient enough to wait for us. And now I leave the floor to Isabella. Good morning, everybody. Sorry for the delay, but I'm coming from Florence and I try to come as soon as possible. I apologize for Professor Benelli and architecture Filieri who cooperate with me and Mario, and so they couldn't be here. And I will represent them, and I will illustrate to you what we deal with, and I have indeed a historical background, and I will try to be short, and I'll try to indeed illustrate to you the main concepts and the soul of this lab. And as Mario mentioned, this is a university lab, meaning that it is a lab in cooperation with the University of Florence and the Italian Association of Opticians. Within the Faculty of Industrial Design, we have a 3-year faculty named Industrial Design, and also a 5-year faculty in design, and there are several courses within this university, and there are various connections and links with the world of optics and frames. So we devote our time to research, and this research is, of course, continuing in class, and there is a great reference to the project. The University of Florence and the University of Industrial Design is famous because they really dedicate a lot of time to concrete projects, and the theoretical part probably is not so much focused on, but we have students coming at the end of the period with these model. The model we realize with our students and professors and teachers, and we have indeed included these in this lab that has been working for 6 months, but as a matter of fact, we have been studying the world of optics, of spectacles and frames for over 3 years. I am the third, you see on the slide, idea with training and education. I am a historian. I teach history of design, and I really like to lead this. So you see, under an administrative point of view, you see 4 functions. So generally, the functions are all included into one because we really work together. And this is one of the strengths of the lab. So as a matter of fact, there are 4 people doing at the end the same thing. So, thinking about this lecture, so the various concepts addressed by the lab, and in terms of my role, you see, those are my main duties and tasks, but essentially, we would like to have the word of spectacles, glasses and frames within the world of design. It might be obvious, but it's not, because design is so popular among all people, and sometimes it's difficult to define what design is and how much spectacles and glasses are within the design. And if you take any book of history, and I am an expert of history, are part of the usual glasses like Ray-Ban or others that are very much related to fashion, but eyewear and spectacles and glasses are not so much part of the pathway of design. And we, in our lab, would like to give a place to eyewear into the world of design. And indeed, in Italy, the world of design has always been very important. And also eyewear has always been very important in Italy. And individually, there is a lot of literature also on eyewear and on the evolution of eyewear, what happened to glasses and spectacles, how they have changed over the history. But what is missing is this link between eyewear and the world of design, because indeed glasses and spectacles have created many references within the world of design. I'd like to know how much the material in eyewear has widened the place of spectacles and glasses in the world of design. And so, indeed, for many centuries, indeed, eyewear has not been given so much importance, because if you used to wear, spectacles, this was not so much, indeed, was not so known. And indeed, those wearing glasses, it was because people were reading, and you think of historical characters, even St. Joseph, when they're doing something engaging, they're wearing glasses. And indeed, eyeglasses have been synonymous with culture, because they didn't want to think of eyeglasses as a way of caring for a handicap. But then in history, this has changed, and then eyeglasses started to be part of a different history. But we really want to give the right role to eyewear in the world of design. This is the starting point, and we would like to continue working in this direction. Also because, and we really care for that, the word design is not, or at least is everything that you don't say, because the daily use of the word design is completely wrong, because they were thinking about the design of a frame, the design of a lens, the design of a lens. So there is no design of lens. There is no drawing of a lens. So there is a geometry. So there is another big mistake. Design doesn't mean fashion. It's very important then to attribute the real meaning of this word. Otherwise, everything becomes design. Everything becomes what is presently a great confusion. It's a great mess. Something that I try to explain to my students, because my function is indeed to also illustrate certain words such as design and aesthetics. Aesthetics is something that doesn't have a clear-cut definition. And this is not because this does not make sense, but the word aesthetics and the word beauty and beautiful are words that we often use in our daily activity, because aesthetics and design are so pervasive in our culture that we widely use these words, but the reflection in concrete terms is not something to be taken for granted. So what design is, but if you read the millions of definitions of design and volumes and textbooks, you see even the definition that you may find in certain volumes. The definition starts with 3 lines of definition, so as the production of objects in a mass production method. But if we could summarize, and this is indeed a summary, but design is designing an object in its best way possible, remembering that this object must have a function. And this is not so actually easy, because when an object has to fulfill a function, you may realize that many of the objects do not have a function. What does this mean? I always ask my students to examine objects and also eyewear to understand indeed that design is not an outer appearance, but is something part of it. So I have referred to 5 points that I have not made up myself, but are the main aspects of Italian design. First of all, the logics of machinery. So you have to think of a project, of a plan, a drawing, a real drawing like Leonardo da Vinci used to make. So an idea translated into a drawing. And this is very different. And if you think of how Leonardo used to draw and plan and design, and indeed Leonardo da Vinci was one of the first designers ever, because he has indeed designed many different objects, tracks, and lighter. So many different things were designed by Leonardo da Vinci. So the drawing behind design is not just making a sketch, it's not just drawing what you see, but it is to indeed make a project, make a design. And you have to think also of the machinery and the equipment that will realize that object. So indeed, thinking also of our culture, a design object can even handmade and can be assembled by hand. But when there is the use of machinery, you have to think of that object in its best quality. So it must have that quality of excellence, of extreme beauty. And if I work these in a basic way, then you won't have the best of it. And then materials do not only have physical characteristics, but they also have their own character, their own nature. So, for instance, wood is warm, glass is transparent. So when a designer works on these, works on materials, that's why materials, especially in eyewear, is very important, because, of course, eyeglasses are very simple objects, but they have reached their best shape and form, because we mainly work on the material. Indeed, the material is very important for designers. And the third point is indeed the form, the shape, the formal language, and this is part of my discipline. So you then work that object so that the language of that object is known, is understandable. And if I propose an innovative and future object, I must indeed propose that object in a way to be understood. And then the fourth point is ethics. Any object must be ethical, and there is the main preliminary concept that you shouldn't even think about manufacturing, for instance, a balloon in India with child labor. So, but you also think of disposable objects, and so objects must continue even their value and meaning because they have an impact on the ecology, on the world. And the last point is aesthetics. So you have to consider that aesthetics is not just beauty, but aesthetics is a discipline. And if you can separate human knowledge in two big compartments, there is logics on the one side and aesthetics on the other side. The logics is to understand in a rational way the word, and the aesthetics is to understand the word through feelings, perceptions, and sensations. So if I can feel something cold, this is a sense, then I give this value, and that is a part of my experience. So, for instance, also talking to children, for instance, my daughter knows what is cold, and did whom in the way of understanding always says that overprojection of a human mind solves impressions and ideas. Anything that I learn is an impression. And this is fundamental. So in design, you indeed refer to feelings and emotions. You also choose an object because you share certain values. And when a designer conveys these in eyeglasses, they are thinking about an aesthetics concept, so to think how the user's senses are stimulated in that way of sharing. So when I used to teach aesthetics, so people thought that I was supposed to say what is beautiful and what is not beautiful, but that's not the point, because beauty, aesthetics, or do not refer to the object of art as the only reference, but the object of art stimulates an emotion. An artist does something to communicate something. If I look at a work of art, I have an emotion, and the objects should do the same, should give us emotions and feelings when we use objects, when we throw them away. So, for instance, I deal with a new project thinking of a life cycle of objects in the emotion we have taken it. For instance, I buy eyeglasses because, of course, I need them, so I use them because I need them. Then these eyeglasses should have also communicative values. I should feel at ease, I should feel comfortable, and the eyeglasses should communicate my personality. But when they break, or when I buy other glasses, I may not throw them away, I may keep them. So sometimes we shouldn't do recyclable objects when we buy objects and we don't want to throw them away. So this is a way to widening these aspects. This is what we do. So some examples of what we do. So some of you that came to our centers that helped us, and the importance of experimentation. Our student Giovannini talked about frames for children. So we had indeed a course for frames for males and females for children in 3 age groups. So students had to think about eyewear for children, so something that characterize children. And also my daughter at 6 years of age wanted eyeglasses. And I like to show you now what is done by students.
this should actually have been explained to you by Mrs. Benelli, who's dealing more with fashion design in the university. More or less, the students and the course with a project. So a project on glass, and they, of course, take care of all the details and the design. And this is, for example, a work of a student who started reasoning around the problems of those having to take pictures wearing glasses. And so he just thought about sort of designing an openable eyewear, but then he said, I want to do something that has nothing to do with the camera, but it's like viewing the world through lenses. And so he thought about a way to rotate the lens as a camera does. And so having a pair of glasses that would allow me to see the world as I would do with my camera. And so I use these glasses to do the same. And then Mario knows this better than me. Of course, he made all this project also feasible. And here you see the double function of this pair of glasses this student designed. So they have to think not only at the pair of glasses, but also the packaging, making it a marketable object, an object that can be sold on the market. This is another example, a project from a girl who dealt with materials in particular, so who focused in particular on marble, and in this case it was a marble powder, with a very strong and robust frame, but lightweight at the same time. So it was quite an important test for these students, but of course they also had fun in experimenting with different materials, also thinking about all the recyclable materials that they could use. This is another project, again a project that worked around materials with mother of pearl being added to it. In this case, the student looked more at the formal side of what is conveyed by the pair of glasses when worn. So more the feeling side, the fashion side of the eyewear. So a pair of glasses that tells something about ourselves, about those wearing them. And another student got the inspiration from Venice bridges. This particular bridge in Venice, and so the different parts making up the bridge were also the same components for this project. So it's a pair of glass that reminds you of this particular bridge in Venice. Also, in this university, you, of course, have always work in progress. So all these projects can be continued on. Like in this case, the little bricks that could be worked over and continued on. But this tells you also, how all this work done on eyewear can be used also in other fields. This is another project of from another student. In this case, of course, the inspiration is taken from the vegetable world. So it's a funny project at the same time. You cannot always think that eyewear has something lasting forever. It's an accessory, and an accessory, as we always say. And Mario, of course, it makes an extension between object and accessory. sometimes we feel by calling glasses as an accessory, we might diminishing their value. And of course, also mass production in Italy, is also helped in this respect. But there's also the design part, and actually, in the end, it's an open object to society, and it's not a simple accessory. Also, in terms of the function of eyewear, we need to continue to work because it shouldn't be just a fashion object. We need to make sure that they become like objects like a mobile phone that have a use, a function. So we need to work also on that side of eyewear. But it is true that nowadays glasses have so many functions, and among these functions we also have that of being a fashion accessory, which is right for it to be also an accessory for this is the aubergine, the other version. This is yet another project by another student who designed a special hinge, very quick to replace hinge, so that you can change the temples very quickly. There's also a replace the temple very quickly, and of course the student also studied all the possible materials that could be used for the temples. Here you will see another project by another student who studied around the bones of our skeleton. So the inspiration here is our skeleton and our bones. And here another project of a reversible pair of glasses. So you have the nose piece and that rotates, and you can have two pairs of glasses in one. So it's a reversible spectacle. So it's another interesting idea. This is the last project I would like to show you, and in this case the student really created a prototype, went to a famous company in Florence and asked them to actually build and construct this pair of glasses. The inspiration here is the orchard, and so you see the final version of the project with very special shape of the frame, very feminine, sharp, different shades and colors also have been used. Getting the inspiration from the flower. But this is, is how our students are working to produce a beautiful object. And that's it as far as I'm concerned. This is what I wanted to show you in terms of the projects that were designed by our students. Now I leave the floor to Mario. Well, first of all, I think that it's clear to all of you by now how this lab is working. So we focus on a very important element, which is the frame. And of course, we need to distinguish between frame and the final pair of glasses. So the frame, of course, is thing specific, and of course, a frame can be that of sun glasses or optical spectacle. So my task is now to focus on the market and see how the market is sort of moving according to design and intuitions that where they're in this field. And here we see a very important date, which is 1989. In 1989, the market implodes. Two phenomena, appeared. The EQV concept, the daily lens, and as you can see, opticians actually took a while to understand this concept. And then we see the titanium by Lindberg being launched on the market in this same year. It's a small Swedish company, and imported in Italy by Vincenzo Cinque. And this is the ball date for the three-piece eyewear. And then another important date is 1994, when the Rocky Architect is opening up an open space near Bologna. Now you see that all stores now have that's been exposed and displayed, and that was not so beforehand. They would keep them in the drawers and take them out one by one, whereas now the new concept is that you have to display the products, and this was thanks to architect Ernesto Rocchi. And then the different big groups started to form, like COI, of the Italian Opticians Consortium, and then the Luxottica that is listed on the stock exchange. This is also another milestone in the history and on the market. So the concept of frame, the concept of fashion and design are being affirmed by Luxottica throughout the world. But let's now focus on the influences that played a role in this market. Apps, of course. Sometimes people don't want to buy a pair of glasses. They look at the different options they have in the store windows, and they take pictures maybe, and then they decide what to buy. And this is something, needs to be taken into account by opticians. Laser printers. Laser printers are a reality nowadays. And for sure, we're just at the beginning. But if you remember, the first mobile phones were actually small suitcases that were very, very expensive, and everyone was saying they won't go far. Whereas now, we cannot do without them. So now, in Milan, if you go in Corso Genoa, you can have your pair of glasses being constructed for you through a laser printer. So, among the things that you could produce with a laser printer, we have the frames. So we need to follow this very carefully, also to understand this has an impact on design. we need to understand the impact of this technology on our world. And then the Bitcoin, let's leave them aside. This is just a new payment method. Maybe it's sort of a dangerous way. Someone is trying to avoid that type of payment, but I think we will be faced with this issue sooner or later. And then e-commerce and the role played by opticians. E-commerce, I mean, is there, and you need to live with it. You need to tackle it. You need to think about it. Of course. Sometimes we just feel we're crying in the desert, and that you cannot do anything unless they're also affected, and then they start also shouting. This is typical, in any field. We put there our, thinking capability. We confront ourselves with others, but on serious things. So, like, for example, as for e-commerce, there's a very big portal selling clothing and also linen clothing with a turnover of billions of euros. And they match also the different clothing items, and maybe in the future they will also offer the sunglasses or glasses to be matched with clothing, and so we need to be ready. We shouldn't forget that the big portal was opened in Germany, and in a year that this portal took 10% of the market, and not sunglasses, but more glasses. So it is important to think about our identity, to do sort of a reasoning around our identity. And then let's move to frame, or actually it's focused on frames. What is a frame? This is our starting point always. Frames are not accessories, are not sort of aids of any kind. The frame is not what is helping you keeping lenses over your noses. Frames are a talking fashion object, and talking, this is the important adjective of. It's a fashion object, i.e. it has its own life. And of course, you're always staring eyes, and what's in front of these eyes, this is frames, and frames are talking to me. I have chosen these frames. They make me feel in a certain way. I want to tell you something with these frames. And of course, if I don't feel easy with some types of frames, I won't wear them. And of course, this word fashion is not a technical word, but the fashion word is also important. In this fashion term, we have the concept of movement, which is a physical concept. I mean, within the fashion term, you have a movement side. It's a continuous evolution. It's continuous research. It's the brain that moves, and things come afterwards. This is fashion. And once again, fashion is talking to you. When you wear fashion, you are communicating who you are. Maybe the youngest won't recognize this person, even though this person is famous. But in this case, with glasses on, you have no doubts anymore. This is what I mean by talking object. And then not many are humble enough to look behind and study, and I would like to underline this word study, the past. But there's no modernity without wisdom and creativity without tradition. We are trying to study this to sort of rediscover our tradition. I make a very simple question to you. Which is the concept at the basis of Mido, this exhibition? The object, the frame that I take in my hands. Who started all this? Which mind started all this? It has not always been so, but maybe these concepts were the right ones, because these concepts were started by people that had studied and especially that had loved the object. And this love for the object was then conveyed and spread around. All those frames that you see here around are colorful. In the past, they were just white, black or brown, ivory or turtle pattern. What we're doing is the result of a very long path. The spectacles are a book and especially a study that was done on frames, on technical features, on design features, which is important. Because you talk with opticians, but sometimes they lack the fundamentals in terms of the construction of the pair of glasses. So this is extremely important. We need to bear that in mind, and especially we need to study. And we come to today's world. Let's try and understand what are the concepts that move around us. Well, this is the constitution deed of the Luxottica Company back in 1961. But especially, today's world. Now there's an announcement here, so it was. The speaker has stopped talking. So, I was saying, from 1971 to 1973 and then 75 and 77, you have many different important steps that were made and concepts that were moved forward and brought to sort of today's eyewear. To make it short, Albini goes on there at catwalk with 3 brands and a very colourful pret-à-porter collection. This means this collection enters in our daily life. Colours are part of our life. And this is extremely important. This is a fashion show in the Sala Bianca. This is Mr. Walter Albini, and you have the cover page of Vogue in 1971 stating this new word, pret-à-porter. In 1973 then, so you see it's very quick. Paolo Seminara, once again in Florence on the catwalk, we have 3 different models and 24 colours in this Sala Bianca, the white room where all fashion shows were held. This hall, this white hall, was very important. But in those years, with no internet, that fashion design was very important for internationalization. and actually models were presented that were particularly suitable for the fashion world, and it was a revolution in the way frames were constructed and colors were taken from the street. And the designer loved color and was a photographer at the same time. And so in this case, in the old catalogs, you would have different sizes. Instead, he reduced them down to 3 with 24 colors available. And if you go around now, we still have 3 sizes and infinite colors. So if you take, a pair of glasses with in these sizes and with these colors, and the person that started also is Mario Spinari, and he's also the one that designed this iconic shape for the Mephisto, the one that you see on your lap. That was actually discarded at the beginning. Now, if you read the press releases, they call this frame cat eyes and different, eye shapes. But we have 4 shapes for frames, and the colors they call Milano, Florence, and Genoa. But why? Why the innovation in the big sizes was possible together with the color revolution? Well, because Paolo exploited the launch on the Italian market of Sola. That was the first one to introduce large sizes. There's also, the cause for prismatic effect. Another very important character here in this story is Mr. Germano Gambini. Mr. Germano Gambini also understood So Mr. Germano Gambini understood that actually we need to go out of the traditional colors, and so he started working on 4 models. We're back in 1973 once again, and on Optica Italiana we have the atom-clad Tono and Pop models being showed for the first time. In the Pop model in particular, he started studying a red shade that will be revolutionary. And indeed, the explosion of made in Italy in the eyewear industry dates back to 1975, when Valentino Rossi becomes director of the Mazzucchelli's lab. In this lab, they are able to produce, thanks to the indication of Spinari, Gambini, Miclia, and other young designers of those years. And this lab managed to follow their indications and really bring in a revolution in the industry. And this, of course, followed the revolution that was there on the market and in the society. In 1978, Ken Scott designed his first pair of glasses with the logo, and it's important because the logo, dates back to that era. Of course, I'm not reading you through. And then I was also saying that back in 1975 we have this Mazzucchelli lab that worked on the first selfless pair of glasses. And this is communication that we feel is always extremely important, and that needs to be sort of taken care of. and this is why we organized this conference. As far as the brand is concerned, since I only have 5 minutes, and I'll take 3 of these 5 minutes available so that I can have 2 more minutes next year. But I would like you to understand the importance of the brand. And Don Quixote, that started his astrophysical adventure, needs to ride a horse that is different from Bucephala and Babieca, because we have the Alessandro Magno's horse and the one of El Cid Campeador. So he thinks, and at last, after having made structured, and after having taken into account different names, he decided for brand, because this name is very important and significant for this for what this horse used to be and has now become, and is now quoting Don Quixote. Thank you very much for your attention.